How's about you, Rosie? I mean, it is surely the strangest thing to be a librarian and having to put a close sign on the door.
It's awful, because the whole sort of psyche is you fight to keep libraries open, don't you? And it's just been so counterintuitive that we've had to say. But if you think about it, the surfaces in libraries, the books, thousands of books, computers, self-service machines, it's just almost impossible. So basically, the message came through last Monday. We'd already been, quite a lot of the staff were having to work from home anyway, because we're all on the flu jab list, most of us. So we'd had a week to sort of get our heads round it. And then all of a sudden, we did have plans that we could have staff in libraries behind closed doors. We'd be able to deliver this, that, and the other. And then all of a sudden, nope, the buildings are closed completely. So we're just constantly reinventing how we work, and we're doing it remotely and just talking to each other on Skype and having virtual coffee breaks and virtual meetings and virtual catch-ups. So yeah, we're moving very fast and we're learning a lot.
When you said, I'm going to be talking to you a bit later about ways in which libraries are still open, because obviously they are open in some sort of sense. But the thing about being on your own home alone as a writer, in a strange way, it's normality, isn't it?
Yeah, I feel quite lucky in a way, because it isn't that unusual for me. I mean, it is a bit tough in the evenings, because my husband died a couple of years ago, and it would be lovely to have somebody to have a bottle of wine with and a chat with at the end of the day. But I think I'm not quite as thrown by it all as somebody who goes to the office, who's used to going to the office and having friends at work and things.
So can you say, what are you actually working on now then? Are you working on another Vera, or is it a standalone, or are you working on the follow-up to The Long Call at the moment?
Yeah, it's the follow-up to The Long Call, the Matthew Venn book. There's a new Vera book which is finished and dusted and done and will come out in September. And that's called The Darkest Evening. But no, I'm just a little way into the new Matthew Venn book.
So tell me about how Matthew arrived, because he's a fantastically complex character. I mean, you like complex characters as part of, it's part of what you do. But presumably, when you're starting a series and you're thinking of a character from it, you can't just sort of, you've got to have some thought to who this character is going to be over the arc of novels.
Yeah, I think the characters come out of the place, really. And having decided, because I went down and stayed with I grew up in North Devon, I went to stay with an old school friend there. And just talking to her and about the community that she'd grown up in, which was quite a strict, restricted, evangelical community. That's where Matthew Venn came from, because it seemed to me that if you'd grown up in a community like that, doted on, the only child of parents, of older parents, who saw you maybe as the great new thing that was going to save the community, you'd be the next preacher, and then suddenly you lost your faith and were cast out, that the police service might seem, I don't know, an alternative. You'd have the same sense of duty and family, and so that's how he came about. And he's gay, not because I wanted to make a political point and write a gay character, but the people who were in my head at the time I was writing it were the couple who scooped me up after Tim died and looked after me, and were a gay couple, and they were the closest friends that I had, and that were great friends of Tim and mine. And so I think because they were in my head when I was writing, that's how they ended up on the book.
And there's something that, I was just wondering about why you chose that place. Now, obviously, this is a place you really know, because that's where you grew up. But on the other hand, you don't live there. And I was just wondering if there's something about the places you imagine, because you're still, obviously, it's always in your head somewhere you grew up, isn't it? Does it have that kind of force that stories kind of invent themselves there because it's part of your experience?
I think so. And it was a place where I was really happy. We moved there when I was 11. And so I had all my teenage growing up years there, and really, really close friendships. And I've got together quite recently. We've had just a few friends have got together again, and all of us saying that it was a very special time for all of us, the sixth form, and that for all of us, university never quite lived up to those last couple of years at school. So I do remember it very, very vividly, falling in love for the first time, getting drunk for the first time, parties on the beach, all that. So yeah, it's very vivid in my mind.
Now, how's about you, Rosie? Have you read many of Anne's books?
All the Veras, all the Shetland, long call, yes. So I'm up to date and just waiting. You know, I've got a whole list of authors who I just need to keep going and keep producing. So yeah, I've fascinating, because the one thing I think is they've all got such completely different voices. You don't get a hint that, you know, oh yeah, that's a bit of Vera or that's a bit of Jimmy Perez. They are.
Have you read many of Anne's books?
Oh, we've got an echo, haven't we?
That was. I wonder where that came from.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I have read and enjoyed, and I'm waiting. I never read a crime novel until I was pregnant with my first child, and I don't know what he did, but he switched me onto crime. I was on girls' boarding school stories before that.
In terms of going back to Vera, because the other Vera is finished, you've got it coming up, The Darkest Evening,
yeah,
which comes out in the autumn. You've obviously done this before, but is swapping between the two series a simple thing? And also, just because Vera is now such a huge thing in the British national consciousness through the TV thing, does that ever make it harder to write?
I don't think so, because I've been writing it for quite a few years before the television happened.
Oh, that's me coming back. I wonder where that's coming from. Can everybody hear me asking a question about 3 minutes after I've asked it? This is technology going crazy. If we can pretend I don't exist in my
I think you might need to mute someone. I think it's an echo coming back from someone who's watching.
Let me see. Oh, good. I think everybody is muted apart from us three, actually.
Yeah. You're fine. Your echo's gone now.
Now, I've just got to let some more people in. Oh, have you been waiting for ages, folks? Sorry, your audio is all muted, so the three of us can talk. If you've got questions, please add them in comments. But welcome. Sorry, I've lost my thread now with that questioning thing. I was just talking about, Vera, because we've got it, but also Vera's played by such a magnificent actor in Brenda Blethyn. And does that ever colonize your own imagination, if you know what I mean? Other people's representations of your book?
I think Brenda plays her so well, and she always talks about going back to the source material, so she always reads the books. As soon as the book comes out, we send her one, and so she's so close, I think, to the Vera of the books. I think of her as our Vera now, and I sometimes get a text, they want me to do this, but I don't think our Vera would do that to you. So it doesn't really get in the way, and I'd written a number of books before it was picked up for television, so she was very much established as a character in my head before Bren came along. So that works quite well. And you said about alternating between books. I love that. I would struggle, I think, to write the same series every time. I really enjoy getting to the end of a book and thinking, oh, now I can go back to North Devon, or that's grand, I'll be home in Northumberland again now. So yeah, I like the idea of alternating.
And when you did the long call, which looks like a series, it feels like a series that you know so much about already. Did you have a kind of sense of, that you? I know you've written so many books, but did you ever have any nervousness that you would get away with it, and then sense of joy when you realised that it was a world you actually started to build there?
Yeah, that was important, I think. You need to understand that world and that voice. That's far more important than thinking about a plot or even thinking about the other characters. So yeah, it's that world that's important. And I don't plan in advance, so I don't have any idea of the arc of the series because I don't plot the books in advance. So certainly don't plot a couple of books ahead. But once you've got the world and the voice, then you're away, I think.
Rosie, you're a massive crime fan. I know you're an omnivore anyway, but we've been living through some pretty giddy times for crime fiction in the last sort of decade or so, haven't we? I mean, it really has. I don't know whether you felt the proportion of people checking out crime from your libraries sort of carried on increasing, or whether it's always been there. But we are living through a kind of golden age through books like The Long Call and stuff like that, aren't we? It's really been remarkable how central to our culture it is at the moment.
Absolutely. I mean, crime has always been popular, and it continues to be so. But I think what drives it is series fiction and authors who are prolific, obviously. And I do actually realise that most of the authors I invite to Cambridgeshire are all crime writers, and I really need to have a word with myself, I think. But, you know, I've got to enjoy my work.
It's a good call. It's a good call.
I think so. And it's just, because, you know, I was not a crime writer. I really wasn't, not a crime writer, a reader. I would read all sorts of everything, but I went nowhere near crime. And then I think I was on maternity leave and I was working for a publisher, and I was really, really desperate for something to read. And they sent me some Reginald Hill. And early Reginald Hill was really quite just police procedural, a little bit basic, a little bit. But then he just grew and developed, and by the time we got towards the last books, they were unrecognisable, and you could sort of grow along with him. So I think probably Reginald Hill started me off, and it was a good start.
I think Reginald Hill needs digging out for a lot of the younger readers as well, don't you? I mean, I kind of missed out completely on Reginald Hill at the time, and I've been working my way through them recently, and they're amazingly well written.
Mm. Yeah, he's a great writer. He was a great writer and a lovely man and a great supporter of other crime writers.
In terms of you having to close your doors, it also strikes. I was talking to you about Anne about how in some ways staying in is an enviable state for a writer. But I suspect that actually in terms of your writing, a lot of what you do depends on overheard conversations or being aware of a social world around you. And that's kind of missing right now, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? I should imagine you're the sort of writer that you probably wouldn't want to be in a pub for saying something unguarded that might end up in a novel. I mean, it seems like your books are full of small social observations of that kind, which doesn't really work if we're all at home, does it?
No, I'm hoping that we're not locked down for too long, because I will miss that. Though I'm picking up all these WhatsApp conversations in the street, and that's lovely because there's lots of young families, and I'm way beyond that stage now. So I'm thinking, oh, is that what people do with their kids these days? Is that how it works? Is that what they're saying? And that's fine. But yeah, I need to be back on public transport, earwigging like mad the conversations all around me to get a bit of inspiration.
I've got a question here from Caroline. How much involvement do you have in the adaptations of your books? What do you feel about the actors who play Perez and Vera?
I didn't want any formal say in what happened, because I think they're not going to listen to you anyway, and you just get very anxious and involved. And also, I love writing the books, and I have that creative time writing the books, and it only seems fair to allow the script writers and the directors to use their skills to develop the characters. So once I trusted the team that had bought the rights to it, I was very happy to just let them get on with it. And because of that, I think we get on very well, because they know I'm not going to meddle. So I always feel welcome on set. I get invited to the read-throughs when they get together at the beginning of a series. And in fact, because of the virus, both Shetland and Vera were about to start filming, and that's obviously been cancelled, but I'm hoping that when it's all over, they'll start again.
I've got a question here from Sven, who I'm going to unmute. If anybody has a question, you can put your hands up on this app and say something. I hope that's what you're doing, Sven. I hope it's not a request to go to the bathroom. Sven's calling in from Germany. Sven, can you hear us?
Yes.
Did you have a question there? Or have I caught you on the hop? I'll probably come back to you, Sven. He's just saying, In the meantime, I'll ask one from Andy wrote, I remember seeing Anne at CSI Portsmouth and her saying that she comes up with an idea that she leaves the characters to write the story. Is that still true?
Well, I think I'm always God in my universe, so I control the characters. But yes, it's very much got to be character based. So the characters come first, and then the plot comes after. And I start with maybe a theme or an idea and set them running, and then I see how it goes.
Sven says he was trying to follow me and he just was pressing buttons. That's why his hand went up. Rosie, what I was talking about libraries, I think it's really interesting, because I think, the doors are closed, but I'd like to give you a chance to really talk about, because I've only just discovered this about myself, that libraries actually have quite a large digital offer that's available now. And And there are things. So from your libraries in Cambridgeshire, what could, if I'm stuck at home, as we all are, what can I do with Cambridgeshire libraries?
Right, okay, well, if you go to our library online page, we've got, well, it's added to every week now because we're really bumping up the supplies, but we had about 6,000 ebooks, about 6,000 audiobooks. You could have up to 60 glossy magazines every month and all the back issues for years and years. You could download and read a newspaper from anywhere in the world. You can listen to the article, you can translate it, you can blog it, you can do all that sort of thing. We have an app that you can manage your account on, so you can search the catalogue, find out which are the e-resources, place a hold. You can do that sitting in bed at 2 o'clock in the morning if you've left your router on. All sorts of things. We've got an e-newsletter that goes out to about 35,000 customers every month, which if they want me to, I can beef that up and do it weekly with instructions on how to use e-services, whatever. And at the moment, my tiny team that I'm part of, we're trying to put together a programme of events that we can deliver using FaceTime, Facebook Live, and possibly Twitter chats. So my team and I are talking about rhyme times, special story times, possibly poetry, Twitter chat every afternoon about whatever the readers want to chat about, inviting authors to join us on a Twitter chat, always looking for authors. So we're trying to extend the service almost without having a lot of staff to do it with. It's really bizarre because it's the things you can do remotely and to an audience, but without masses of people behind you. It's really bizarre.
I think we're all just learning on our feet, aren't we? I mean, I think it's really interesting how much we know everything's a different shape now, and some of that different shape's going to stay, whatever happens, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, this morning there was a Japanese and English baby rhyme time. I think it was Kingston Libraries that delivered that. And I'm just watching all of this unfold on Twitter, which is a brilliant place for librarians and libraries to hang out. And there's a colleague of ours up in the Northwest called Ian Anstis, who curates a production. It's a publication. It's, I think, was it Public Libraries News, and he's on Twitter as well. And he's been corralling all the news by authority right through the UK. And so we all know what each other are doing. He's doing absolutely sterling work. We've had the long debate about how long a virus can live on a plastic jacketed book. That's been quite a long time, 72 hours to be safe. So lots of library authorities. I can see Blackpool have put an offer out that I've seen on Twitter. West Sussex have done something, Norfolk, Blackpool, Greenwich, lots. And we're all just sort of getting there. I mean, you know, we had like a week and a half to learn how to do these things. So yeah, very exciting, tiring.
Can I just put in a plug? My publisher, Pan Macmillan, is setting up a Twitter reading group, and we're doing the long call for the first one. And it's called 1 PM Read, because I noticed that somebody had asked about this in the chat box at the bottom. It's called 1 PM Read, and it'll be the first book group, Twitter book group, and we're hoping to be able to do it on Facebook as well, is the long call, and it's on the 17th of April, 1 PM UK time, so various times around the world, but we hope that lots and lots of people will join in with that.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love the way that people assume that publishers are very bad at responding to a changing environment, but actually the last 10 years and so much has been thrown at them. They've actually got much better at it than we know. Do you know what I mean? I think there are some people working quite hard at it to make this all more accessible.
Yeah, I think so, and it's sad because we heard today that Gardner's, the bookshop supplier, isn't supplying books anymore, but I think the publisher is really trying to get books directly to booksellers so that they continue to be able to sell by mail order and online. So just watch this space with that, because I think publishers are really trying very, very hard to supply books to the sellers.
Yeah, I thought that was a terribly sad thing. I mean, for those that don't know, Gardner's are one of the book distributors, and they have big warehousing, and they'd sort of really risen to the challenge over the last sort of week or so that independent bookshops could actually place their orders directly to Gardner's, and they would be sending out, and it sort of protected the independent bookshops, but they've had to close down as well, so that option's gone. And I just think, you know, it's unfolding that quickly, a lot of it, isn't it? But
It is.
yeah,
But
people are trying
I know
to.
that all the publishers are trying to see what they can do
Oh, okay.
to support the indies by
Yeah. I
sending
mean,
direct. Or
you kind of need them to be there when normality strikes. Yeah, Caroline Grimshaw's also talking about how impressive the library's offer is. So yeah. Yeah, I was just, I was also wondering about whether it changed anything for you. I did see today, I'm on an imprint called River Run with Peter May, and I noticed today he's announced a novel called The Lockdown, which is pretty sneaky on timing, isn't it? And actually, that was also, what's the lovely thing about that? It's about nothing is wasted, because actually it was a novel sitting in his bottom drawer, apparently, that needed a bit of rethinking, but it was sort of 90% there. Do you have work like that you keep around? Do you have stuff that wasn't quite successful, didn't quite fit, but you haven't abandoned it entirely?
There are some half-completed short stories, but no novels. But it is very odd writing this book, because I was a third of the way through before the virus hit, and so I'm not including the virus in the book, but writing scenes with people sat together in a pub, I'm thinking, no, you shouldn't be doing that. So it's very, very odd to be writing without a virus in it. But I've decided that I will carry on and pretend that the virus isn't happening, because it won't come out for another 18 months. And by that time, I'm hoping we will be a bit back to normal, and people won't really want to be reading about people being separate and not being able to hug each other.
Andy there, who looks like he's very studiously taking notes, is also a fellow writer, and I think, yeah, it's an issue, because you wonder what kind of, I think especially crime fiction, part of the thing that makes crime fiction really powerful is it's connected to a real world.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite sure.
It's very interesting how people deal with that.
Yeah. Have you been able to work at all there, Rosie? To read at all there, Rosie, or are you just up to your eyeballs in trying to organise whatever this new world is?
Well, both, because I'm not losing time travelling to work, because usually it's an hour each way, and I've been at my desk in my lounge for the last 3 weeks now. So I can, beazle around, log on 9 o'clock, finish whenever I need to finish, and then, yeah, I can read after that. There's, TV's okay. There's no sport. I'm missing my Liverpool, dreadfully.
Oh, Rosie, you're not a Toon supporter.
No,
not
my
living in
mum is.
Gateshead.
My mother is. I've got her on, because she's down here as well, because we're in the Fens in Cambridgeshire. And I've got her on the Sounds app, BBC Sounds, and you can listen to your local radio. But I think they used to switch off the football and you couldn't get it over the internet. I'm not sure whether that'll change. So she'd be listening to Newcastle. The year Sunderland beat, it was Leeds and Sunderland, because I was always a Leeds fan when I was young. I didn't speak to my mother for ages when she supported Sunderland. She shifted from Newcastle to Sunderland, which is unusual, because we're playing Leeds. Very, very. We had a bit of a rift over that, but she still supports Newcastle, and I've transferred to Liverpool for the past 10 years or so. But yeah, it's interesting. I do get to read, and I'm now going to go into the loft, and I'm going to get all my old Mallory Towers paperbacks out. My lovely 1960s Armada, green dragons and red dragons. They used to cost 6pence. And I'm going to start rereading my Mallory Towers, because I've just binge watched it on the iPlayer.
I was going to say, is this a return to a certain place of safety? I think there's some interesting reading going on. People are either reading books called The Lockdown, or they're going in the other direction.
I'm going the other direction. I've got 59 Eleanor Brent Dyer chalet schools to return to, which I do. She's a South Shields lady, and I don't know whether you've ever heard of her. But
yes, of course.
Yes. Well, I've got my Brent Dyer collection sitting in a bookcase upstairs. So when times are really bad, I'll just start at number 1.
And I know you always talk about Simenon and people like that as a sort of one of your lodestones, but you also mentioned Nicholas Freeling, who I think is a much neglected writer these days, around that sort of Love in Amsterdam, the beginning of those sort of things like that. But was that a real touchstone as well for you at the beginning?
Yeah, I thought I can remember reading, as you say, Love in Amsterdam, which is a very short book, but so good. And for a first novel, if nobody's read him, they really should. And after that, some of his books are brilliant. And then he has the odd, very, very weird one. But Yeah, read Nicholas Freeling if you've not read him. I love books set in other places, and my comfort reading at the minute is Andrea Camilleri. So I go back to Sicily and the heat and imagine myself eating amazing Italian food in a crowded restaurant and drinking red wine with friends on a sunny terrace.
I'm going to probably call a day to it. We're just being joined by somebody there, I'm afraid. But I think we're coming up to half an hour, which is probably enough of me as anybody could cope with. And I've had a very nice time. I was going to say we've got coming up over the next few days. Tomorrow I'm talking to Adam Higginbottom, and he's not a crime writer. He wrote Midnight at Chernobyl, which is a non-fiction book. And it's a really, really brilliant non-fiction book about the Chernobyl disaster. And then on Thursday, I'm talking to Rebecca Waite, who wrote a book called Our Fathers, who I was supposed to be talking, one of these many cancelled events that I was supposed to be talking. So I read her book and I thought it was really brilliant. So I was really looking forward to the chance to interview her at Killer Women, which is the weekend before last. And like everything, I mean, but you must have had so many events cancelled, Anne.
Yes, but there is something a bit joyous about a cancelled event. It's like cancelled meetings, isn't it? I will love coming back and meeting readers again. But for the first couple that were cancelled, I did have a sort of slight guilty pleasure, the fact that I wouldn't have to come down to London.
And then on Friday, I'm talking to Mark Edwards, who's a multi-million selling writer as well. So I'm, as you know, 2 multi-million selling writers in a week. I'm feeling very privileged. So listen, Rosie and Anne and everybody who managed to log in, that's fantastic. It's been a real pleasure spending my afternoon tea time with you both and everybody. This has actually been recorded, so I'm going to upload it, hopefully, if not to Facebook, to YouTube, so people can see it, because I realise that probably lots of people were hoping to see it on the Facebook and haven't managed to. But in the meantime, thank you so much, Anne and Rosie. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Right, all the best.